I have said for the longest time on this channel, the real goal for Brexit was essentially to make the UK a free market fundamentalist paradise. Now, what does that mean? Well, you've heard them say it before. They want a Singapore on the Thames, but you may remember Singapore has a load of regulations, and even a lot of it is state owned. So the Brexiteers aren't going to go for that. But the main thing is their right wing libertarian dreaming, or dreams, shall we say. They want to get rid of regulations. And it is regulations as simple as workers' rights. The P&O scandal very recently is a perfect example. It looks like it almost looks like Chris Grayling or Failing Grayling is actually the one behind that. And what's worrying, of course, is if the government doesn't step in to act, where we have seen very obviously this is an illegal act, what they've just carried out. If the government doesn't act against them, then there'll be another big company go, we can do that and get away with that as well. So there is a lot at stake here, because one of the things and regulations that people like Jacob Rees Mogg and the other Brexiteers want to get rid of are workers' rights. I always like to refer to this point to the opening paragraph of Britannia Unchained, the book which was the Brexiteer Bible, written by many of the people now serving and sitting in the front bench of Boris Johnson's cabinet, where they said that the British workers were among the worst idlers in the world because they are so protected by workers' rights. We have to worry about that. We have to hugely worry about that. But we also have to worry things about safety regulations. We've seen very recently the chemical safety regulations have been weakened very quietly, by the way, which no one paid attention to, which was quite shocking, because now a company doesn't have to declare if it's using dangerous chemicals, where in the past they had to. You can clearly see the problems potentially urging from there, and there's a ton of other stuff around that. Like I said, we did a video a couple of months ago about that now. But yeah, this is basically Jacob Rees Mogg now saying we are out to get rid of these regulations. That is his mission. That is his aim. That is his objective. And it's the aim and objective of the rest of the Brexiteers as well. But they never really say out loud, of course, what regulations they want to get rid of. And you're going to see this as a typical example. Oh, we want to get rid of these gold-plated regulations, as JRM here calls it. So anyway, we're going to go diving into this article and see something that's very, very worrying indeed, given the fact that the Tories have such a big majority. And, well, this is what a lot of them, especially the far right of the party, really want. So, as always, before we do go diving into this, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help support the channel that way. So, on with this. This comes from The Independent with the title of Jacob Rees Mogg says his vision for Brexit is scrapping gold-plated EU regulations. So, the government's vision for Brexit is about rid of gold-plated EU regulations, Jacob Rees Mogg has said. Speaking at a parliamentary committee on Thursday, the Brexit Opportunities Minister said the EU had, quote, imposed regulations on the UK and said it was his job to get rid of them. So, which ones? Because not only that, if we diverge, as we've said before, this makes trading harder with Europe. This will force companies to potentially have two assembly lines, one for the EU, one for not. And even then, there may just be companies that are essentially just forced to continue with the EU regulation guidelines. So it's not going to be, quote, cheaper for them if they just switch off, because if they did, they would then have to create another assembly line specifically for products to send to the EU, because again, you have to meet those EU regulations if you want to send your goods into their market. Again, they don't seem to understand that. Again, the EU is our biggest trading partner. So It comes as, of course, the UK government considers diverging away from EU rules on pesticides, on imported food, and as well as car safety regulations, all of which are going to be heavily punished by the EU. If we diverge, then we can't send those products into the EU, and expect retaliatory action from the EU saying, well, now we have to make sure that your food is checked more and that the car safeties, the cars that you are sending from the UK to the EU are also checked more. So that again increases border delays. So we went on to say, what is the vision in terms of Brexit opportunities? Is that we should have an economy that is more efficient, that we should have the supply side reforms, that we should get rid of the quote unnecessary, often gold plated regulation that the EU Union imposed on us. Jacob Rees Mogg told the Public Administration Select Committee. This isn't how you make an economy more efficient by getting rid of regulations. Very often, he said, we were outvoted in the Council of Ministers, and we have things that often came through by qualified majority voting, or we abstained on things because we knew that we would lose at that stage. It's about freeing up the economy. Not true at all. That's a very, very bad view of, shall we say, the voting record in the EU. And remember, after these rules were passed in the EU, they then went to the UK Parliament, where people like Jacob Rees Mogg could vote on them. Mr. Rees Mogg, also an ardent supporter of Brexit, claimed that the power would be transferred to devolved nations as part of the change. He said there was a wonderful flow of power from Brussels, not just to Westminster, but also to Edinburgh and Cardiff and Belfast, he said. Rees Mogg was appointed in his current role early this year, but there was very little time to actually solidify the information provided from the government about what his role would actually be. And if I still am correct about this, I think I am, there still isn't a fleshed out detail of what his role actually details on the government website. In February, he issued a plea to the readers of The Sun to flag possible Brexit benefits to him, potentially trying to crowdsource regulations he could scrap. Mr. Rees Mogg has previously argued that the UK could go a very long way to rolling back high EU standards and say that some regulations were, quote, good enough for India and could be good enough for the UK. And this is where it gets really worrying, because he goes on to say this. We could, if we wanted, accept emission standards from India, America, and Europe. There would be no contradiction with that, Mr. Rees Mogg told the Parliamentary Committee in 2016, a few months after the EU referendum. He's trying to say, we could say that if it's good enough for India, it's good enough for here. There's nothing to stop that. Well, certainly under the Tory majority, that is certainly the case. But these regulations are going to be a nightmare, and there is going to be a massive public backlash, almost certainly against getting rid of some of these regulations, which is why I've always said whenever there is a move to deregulate, we need to sound the horn as loud as possible to force the government to stop what they're doing, because we've seen them do that happen before, and we need to do so again. As we saw just, I think it was last year, or it might be earlier this year, I think, can't remember now, we saw the business secretary say he wanted to get rid of the working time directive, and there was a massive public backlash against him. And of course, he U-turned on that very quickly. But of course, trade unions and opposition parties have said that workers' rights, environmental controls, product standards, and other protections should not be sacrificed as part of leaving the EU. Ditching rules could make it easier for the government to sign trade deals with other countries around the world, because the standards currently make it very difficult to import goods from other countries with lower or different ones. But MPs warned last week that the benefits from such trade agreements are uncertain and may not exist at all. And again, a concern echoed by some trade economists who say that the economic damage from leaving the single market has massively outweighed any potential gains. Are we shocked? Are we shocked? No, we really shouldn't be. This was the plan for Brexit all along. Jacob Rees Mogg and the rest just wanted to implement their free market fundamentalist wet dreams and try and get away with it. I wouldn't be surprised very soon if we saw what we saw a couple of years ago about getting rid of tariffs altogether and just saying, right, 0% import tariffs for everything. I wouldn't be surprised if we see that, because again, this goes back to the quote golden age of trade that many of these Brexiteers harken back to. But again, they forget that we had colonies, and how shall we say, we pretty much told the colonies what to do, and they were forced to buy British products. They couldn't buy any other products. It's what was called the imperial standard, or not imperial standard, the imperial monopoly, which Britain had over, again, its colonies. So again, this is yet another warning sign of things to come. But again, you do not hear what regulations he wants to get rid of. You saw pesticides, importing food, and car regulations. But what exactly? What exactly these regulations, and what again is the knock-on effect of getting rid of those regulations going to be? And that's the worrying thing you've got to consider about. With Jacob Rees Mogg saying, well, if it's good enough for India, it's good enough for us. That, ladies and gentlemen, is incredibly worrying, where the British public has said time after time after time that they like these high standards, that they want high standards for goods, products, and services. And yet, here you have Jacob Rees Mogg saying, well, we're going to get rid of that. But again, as you can see, they're being very careful not to fully say what their true plan is for these regulations. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and one donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching. I will see you all next time.